going to be misbehaving today, taking a look at the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic to Statistical Manual for all things psychology. Like that's where they go, in case you don't know, to fiddle through and be like, do you check all these boxes so that we can diagnose you and your insurance company can pay us? That's a lot of what it boils down to. But I also have a background in astrology, and so that's hence the name 11th house, and the whole neurodivergent movement is very 11th house Aquarian energy. And so I kind of wanted to mix the two, astrology and psychology. Well, psychology actually has its background in astrology, so the Jungian principles come from astrology.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's kind of like bringing this back full circle now. And the reason that I want to do this series, and we're starting with autism, is I think there's a need for something that I see as an astrologer is the completeness of the energies, so that we need all 12 of these signs and what they bring for the wheel to turn. And so one of those slices of the pie is this neurodivergent energy. And so rather than it being fully outside of the box, although that is one of its functions, I see it as being essential to the function of the whole. And one thing that I've come across in a lot of the writing groups that I'm in, the neurodivergent groups, will be people sort of getting down on themselves when they get their diagnosis. Like it's a bad thing, like it really sets them apart and they don't know, where they fit in. Although ironically you fit in with the people who don't fit in, right? So I felt like there's this need to bring the spiritual perspective into the equation. So I think one thing I want to start to do here is I'm just going to share what an astrology chart looks like so you can get an idea, because a lot of people know what your zodiac sun sign is, and that's a part of it, but there's a lot more to it. So before I go getting into what these energies are, I want to share that with you. So
yeah, and when you show that, will you show me where the 11th house is?
sure. Yep. Okay. Bear with me a minute. We're still getting a little bit used to this.
Absolutely. I kind of think the 11th house could be called the house of weirdos, the way I'm understanding it. But I mean that in the best of ways.
Yes. I would say so. Yeah, we're meant to. Okay, it's present now. They've changed a few things around in here, and they're all different, all these programs. So, all right. There we go. It's giving me the infinity mirror warning.
Uh-oh.
Avoid the infinity mirror. Do not look too deeply into your astrological chart. It will look back at you. Yes. So here's a chart that I just pulled up for today at 6:38. I'm in Port Washington, Wisconsin. And you can see, you've got the zodiac signs that most people are familiar with. Here's Aquarius. That's one of the energies that we'll get into where neurodivergence is seen. But then there's, Capricorn and Sagittarius and so on. And each one of these symbols is a planet. They all have their different energies. Like we know the sun sign. So sun is in Virgo, for example. So that gives the soul of a person born today at 6:38 that Virgo flavor. And they're going to carry that with them their whole life. They might even go on to be writers and editors and so forth, because it's a very detail-oriented. It's also a neurodivergent sign, along with Gemini down here. So, but I'm not going to get too into what all of this means. Suffice it to say, each one of these little slices, they're 30 degrees. Each sign rules a house. And you can look at the houses like an interlocking mechanism, really. It's a way to mix up the energies. So if the 11th house is Aquarius's house, that 11th house, no matter if the wheel turns and it's in, like in this example, it's Capricorn. You're going to bring the 11th house rebellious aspects to the Capricorn energy, which is status quo. You're going to mix those two together. So does that make sense, Angela?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, especially when they think all the lines in the middle, it reminds me of like clockwork gears. Like everything is just kind of,
Well, yeah, and so it's a visual representation of your frequency. The lines in the middle, you can look at them like telephone conversations. So the blue ones are the planets and stuff talking to each other more clearly. They get each other, and the red lines, it's more staticky.
Okay.
So, and then we'll be talking a lot about, like I said, these energies. Let's see. Here's the Uranian symbol. Uranus rules Aquarius, and so does Saturn, which is over here. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm getting two different cursors on my page, so I apologize for the not syncing. Here's Saturn. Here is Uranus. Then we got Mercury over here, which happens to be in Virgo right now. And, the signs and symbols, in case I need to redo that again. I'll get used to this format.
Oh yeah, that's very cool. Well, and we can do whatever format works for you, honestly,
Yes.
as well.
So I'm going to then, I think, pull up, now that you have like a kind of base understanding of the sun is one of the energies. You've got Mercury energy, and that does something that we'll get into, moon energy, etc. And it all makes us up. So that's why we're all complicated. We all have part of these energies in us somewhere. So when people say that everybody's a little neurodivergent, try not to take offense to that. I've seen people who are like, oh, that's just, you don't even understand. Everybody is a little bit, because everybody has somewhere in their chart, they have an 11th house. They have a Mercury, they have a Uranus, they may not be prominent within them, which is the difference that we'll get into.
Yeah.
But they're there. So we're all degrees, and you can look at all of these energies, as with anything in life, as a spectrum, right? There's no good or bad, it's all how we choose to tackle it. And what else is going on? Like, how are these telephone conversations connecting? What's going on with your Mercury,
Yeah.
which is about communication. So, all right, let me see if I can just get through.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like how you're talking about it being a spectrum, because it does, if we were all one way, if we were all neurodivergent or all Aquarius energy or Uranus energy, we can't have that, but if everybody was Virgo, if everybody was, it's how I'm kind of, this is my uneducated astrology 2 cents.
Well, yeah, how boring it would be if everybody was the same energy. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's at the heart of the neurodivergent movement, is that we want that to be showcased. That it's not better or worse. It's different. You might need to accommodate them differently. They might have different challenges, but it doesn't mean that we can't have these wider conversations about the little things that we can do at the very least, and starting with understanding each other, right? And maybe not feeling so outcast. So you can see that if you take that chunk of the 11th house out of that wheel, it's going to clunk. So if you're medicating all the neurodivergent people, they're not able to do their function within society, right?
Yeah.
Which is to look at it differently. And so I have here some of the traits of the main 3 planets that I see as being involved in autism. And we'll get into the DSM-5 in a second. But I think this is good for laying the groundwork for when we go in there, because it's a lot about communication, right? So Mercury is zipping around the sun, and it's like 80 days around the sun. And a lot of times it's conjuncting the sun. So it's with it. So it's adding its flavor to wherever your zodiac sun sign is. So it can really impact just on that alone. Never mind if it happens to be with your moon or with your Venus or whatever. So Mercury is all about communication. It's a very mischievous, curious sign. It's a personal planet, rules the nervous system along with the planet Uranus. And we oftentimes see this in neurodivergence, right? And we've talked about this before, how like it's, you can even see it in the neurons, how it's like lightning, you know, and Uranus is the planet of lightning. So it's these little things that I was always like, that's interesting, little tidbits. You know, I'd get clients who would come in and we just get talking about everything, because you look at their chart and people open up and I'd be going on about how Mercury is always, you know, zipping around. It's curious, so it's like it's got that ADHD type flavor to it too, of wanting to know and do all the things. And then people would be like, well, you know, I just got diagnosed, you know. And so I started putting that together and then looking at it and going, oh,
Interesting.
you know, and then seeing it in my own chart a little differently, because you talk about the weird, you know, I've got a lot of this prominent energy. I got a lot of Mercury and Uranus and Saturn. I got all three of these. And I just kind of accepted my weirdness based on my chart. But then opening it up and seeing the neurodivergence gave me so many more tools and a different way of looking at it that I've really appreciated. So I guess I'm kind of giving that back from the other direction.
Yeah.
Now, you know.
It's kind of cool because it's almost like you could, because it's honestly really hard to diagnose neurodivergency, is my understanding. But this is like a different way to look at it that is honestly more concrete, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because stars are stars.
Yeah.
You know, the patterns are there. And so you
Patterns
can
are
look at
there.
it and read it a lot better than, well, because so many things mask as other things, like ADHD masks as, you know, a plethora of other things. So this really cool. I like that you're doing this.
And you can see why too, because if you've got Mercury conjuncting the sun every so often, you're going to have a certain amount of people who are going to have prominent Mercury. So it's, you know, it's going to be more of a thing. So you see a lot more people who identify with like the ADHD squirrel brain, you know, or one way I just heard it put is like hummingbird, right?
Oh, interesting.
So if you look at neurodivergence as a hummingbird, you know, they're still birds. They just flit around differently and they take up more energy. And so if we can hold space for that as a, you know, understanding that they do things differently so that they can fly in different directions than a lot of birds. It doesn't make them better or worse than a hawk, you know, or an eagle or a sparrow or whatever. So yeah, so Mercury itself, you know, deals with the communication ability and travel and commerce and all of these things. I just kind of spit this out. And then Uranus is the planet of innovation, rebellion, freedom. You know, it's doing things your own way. Uranus is outside the box. It's even a weird planet with a weird rotation, you know, in our solar system. So it's like it's a eccentric, progressive. Like these are key words when you think of the planet Uranus, and it rules the sign of Aquarius. I said that too. So Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So if you are a Gemini or a Virgo or an Aquarian, that is automatically giving you some sort of neurodivergence because you're having that prominent Mercury Uranian energy. To what extent is going to depend on the rest of your chart, you know?
Yeah.
How much maybe you can mask, for example, or just how you process it, how much of a hindrance it is, how many blue lines you have versus red lines. You know, that's when it starts to make up how this affects us on the whole.
Yeah.
And also just how you're raised with it. You know, is it okay to do some of these things? Are they normalized in your house versus not? You
Mm-hmm.
know. So then we have Saturn, which also rules Capricorn. I put in here just to note. And Saturn's all about organization, structure, limits, routine, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
autism, the routine aspect oftentimes comes in, which is a little peculiar to the Uranian energy, which is chaotic. It's rebellious. It doesn't want to do things, you know, anyone's way but its own. So, but you can see that Aquarius is co-ruled by these two energies. So I found that people who are Aquarian will be your autistic people who are more likely to need that structure versus people that might have prominent Uranus that might actually want more chaos. They don't like the structure. They balk at it unless it's structure, again, that they put in place, which I think is probably true for the Aquarian energy too. It's just Saturn can be very controlled. You know, think about father time, right? I say Saturn is the planet of no fun for you. It's reality, Captain Buzzkill, you know.
Yeah.
But we also need Saturn because it's structure and organization. You know, it is society. So Saturn
Mm-hmm.
is the one that makes the rules. Uranus is the one that breaks them. It's another way to look at it.
Very cool.
But there is an overlap within the sign of Aquarius. So it's kind of Aquarius energy on the whole is hard to define. Like it doesn't want to be defined. It's outside the box. And hence, you know, we look at the spectrum, autism, neurodivergence in general, and they're trying to put inside of a box what can't really be put inside a box.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when I was first learning astrology, they're like, okay, you're at the 11th house now. All bets are off. like, like you got Uranian energy. It could go any which way at any time. It's like the lightning strike. Boom. And it's a sign of sudden change. With autism, they can have a hard time with change. But when they do decide to, it's like, okay, I've thought about it in the background with the background programs running. Now it makes logical sense because that's what this energy is all about. I'm going to do it, implement the change, and it'll be like that thereafter. But you have to
Yeah.
get all of the neurons firing together. And one thing that I just learned is that and neurodivergent people have like 65% more neurons in their
Yeah.
frontal lobe. So it's just more stuff. It's that hummingbird, right?
Yeah.
It's processing. The processing speeds are different. Therefore, they have different cooldown periods, right?
Yeah.
And so hopefully this is making sense. Please stop me if it isn't.
No, it's super interesting. I just don't want to interrupt and like make you lose your flow because it's really interesting stuff. And I want to make Uranus jokes. So I'm
Oh,
just
well,
keeping all of those.
please get it out. Yes. I've taken to calling it Uranus over the years. What was it? How do they say it in Portuguese?
Oh,
Do you
I'm
remember?
probably saying this right, but I mean wrong, but it's like Uranus. Wait, I'll just look it up
Uranus.
while you're talking. It was very cool though. It sounded
Yeah.
very pretty.
So yeah, you can see that these planets all represent these different energies that, um, you know, and I'm going to get into the DSM-5 now, and you'll see they'll click. It'll start to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear about that because this is something I've never I've never heard anybody bring this forth in a conversation. You know, like because I was studying astrology, not like any like more dabbling. But this is like it seems like it makes so much sense, but I've never seen anybody talk about it this way.
Page 50. Yeah, in the future, I'll do something different so that this doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But
Well, and we can also try StreamYard because StreamYard is free. You just have that little logo, the StreamYard logo on the top, but there's a way you can get rid of that.
all right. So, okay, so you can see it now, no problem?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, if I cut this out, I'll restart here. Okay, so we've got the tech issues figured out, and here is the DSM-5's take on autism. So you need to have some of these criteria to get the little check boxes to say that you have it. And a lot of them have to do with social issues. And you can see where having the planet of communication and the planet of doing your own thing, you know, and being in your own environment and, you know, things within your own control. I mean, even autism is auto, right? The root word, you know, meaning the self. So it's no surprise then that they're going to be processing the social order of things a little differently. And that's actually, I think, one of the functions of this energy within astrology is to be outside of society to see the bigger picture of what needs fixing, how to make it all run smoother. And so again, you're processing lots of different things. So maybe the social niceties aren't considered as much of an issue. And so it gets kind of put more on the back burner. It might be like, no, but it's like, well, that's illogical. What's the point in doing that? It's not like life or death. So I'm just going to be over here focused on this. You know, it's a very much more survival oriented way of looking at it than the social aspects. So that's one thing that I think might be going on in that instance. It's just you're processing different things and there's so much more space to put in the different input. And oftentimes you'll see like social situations will overwhelm people with autism. And I think this is part of the reason why. It's because they're literally seeing, smelling, like all the senses are going off on a whole nother level. So I know in my own case, like if I'm in a new environment, like I need time to acclimate. I need time to just get used to the basic shapes of everything, you know, and where everything is and what the vibe is. And so I may come across as very distant at first and maybe not wanting to just jump in. But as I get more acclimated, then, you know, it becomes a different story. So that's just one example. But yeah, so you got deficits in social emotional reciprocity, a failure of normal back and forth conversation, to reduced sharing of interests, emotions, or affect, failure to initiate or respond to social interactions. Well, you can see, like, try taking a foghorn to somebody's ear. You've ever been at a loud concert trying to talk to somebody? That's the equivalent of what's going on. And so when you have, when you're taking in and processing more information, it almost is like sometimes people are like the Charlie Brown teacher, you know, and especially as a young kid, like all kids are like, what is this living stuff? And everything's new to them and they're processing everything anyway. And then you take it and it's like, again, you can equate it to, you know how like dogs have a sense of smell that's 10,000 times greater than we do or whatever, you know? It's the same thing. You're processing colors and textures and all of this at a level that's just different than everybody else. And so there might be a delay in my response to you, even knowing that you're talking in that moment. And I don't mean to be rude. I'm just literally overwhelmed, you know?
You bringing up the dogs, they can smell so many more things. Something recently I found out about dogs and their increased sense of smell is that's why like they'll do things that we find horrific, like eat poop. But because they can smell so many other things in there, it's not a stinky thing to them. We're smelling like one very basic, clumsy layer of something.
The clumsy layer of poop. That's what you learn about here at the 11th House channel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I feel like autism is. It's like this ability to see all these other things. Well, like neurodivergence, not just autism. All these other textures and smells and everything. And that's why dogs are so clever at some jobs. Like hunting people down, smelling things, finding lost things in the woods, things like that. So it kind of really reminds me of like bringing it back to neurodivergence.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very apt example. Yeah, you've got deficits in nonverbal communication too. So again, you can see if Mercury is very prominent and firing very close to,
Sorry.
let's say your sun or your moon or whatever, it's going to be on hyper alert in a different level. So Mercury with the moon is going to mix the emotions with the logic. And then you might have somebody who has more of a hard time processing their emotions, has to get them out in a different way, maybe has more meltdowns easier, because not only are they processing all of this stuff quickly, it's now directly feeding into their emotions. Is your dog okay? We kind of smelling poop right now.
Yeah, I was like, great timing, Chief. I didn't know why he started howling behind me, but
He knows.
he's like, you're talking about my people.
People.
Good
So,
boy.
and they talk about failure to make eye contact and body language deficits. You can start to understand that if your nervous system is wired a different way, this is going to be the case. And it's, again, it's just different. And I think partly too, we're wired to see the outside threats more. So again, to get back to the social interaction, if you're part of the tribe, you're a safe thing that I don't have to worry about as much. But I'm looking for that bear on the outside a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we take this energy that's supposed to be really on the lookout and hyper alert, and we say, go into this box.
Yeah.
Do the same thing every day. Do as you're told. Fit within the system that you were designed to be outside of and protecting.
Yeah. And when you put it like that, it is like you're literally telling somebody, okay, behave, and that person is going, but there's a bear. Do you not understand that there's a bear right there? There's a bear. There's this thing happening. You need to know. It would be impossible not to settle down and not tell people or have some kind of reaction.
In fact, Aquarius's buzzword, like they all have their thing, is I know. It's the sign of knowledge. They're the water bearer of knowledge. They're the ones that's supposed to look at all of humanity, all of society. It's the larger group network, the internet. It's all that outside of the box kind of energy. And it can get quite lonely energy because it's meant to be detached, but there's also that desire to be part of, right? And so when you can't make eye contact, not because you're being shady, but just because if I'm looking at you and there's a bear, and you very much feel that there could be, because that's your wiring, you can see how this becomes problematic. It's not personal.
Yeah.
It's just hard for us. Like I went through a period in my early 20s where like I took a speech class and I realized that eye contact was important and that, if I wanted to go up the social ladder that I really needed, this was something I wasn't doing. I would always look at people's mouths, and so I had trained myself to look into people's eyes.
Yeah, but that's still stressful because like which eye are you looking at? You know what I mean? There's a lot there. So I'll do the forehead, the middle,
and you find these little tricks, and then for people to understand that that's always a program that I have running all the time in the background is the eye contact program. It doesn't come naturally to me. I may make it seem like it over time. It may be easier over time, but it doesn't come natural. I naturally will default to looking at your mouth. It's just the way I am. So again, some of this stuff, it's like, is this a disorder? I mean, it is disrupting the order, right, of things. We have our social order and how we want things, but can we make room in that order for these differences to exist without demonizing people who don't make eye contact? As I'm looking into the camera. I'm trying to remember to do that now, I have to add that to the list. So, and the deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships, ranging, for example, from difficulties adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts to difficulties in sharing imaginative play or making friends, to absence of interest in peers. And again, there's this acceptance of the Aquarian energy, the Uranian energy, and even to an extent that the Mercurial is, they're individualistic. So when I see something saying, oh, they have deficits in it, well, at their core, you're taking somebody who's all about freedom and being able to just go off and do their own thing. And that being a beautiful thing. And for society, we want that. We want the person who can be the explorer, right? Too, within the group and go out and push the envelope and innovate and find these new horizons. Science is Aquarian, and technology and all of that. So we need that, but then it's punished on the social end at the same time. So it's like, well, no, you have to be all about the group, even though your basic wiring and your basic energy is like, no, I want to be able to just go do my own thing and not have to go do that if I don't want to. Maybe sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll feel that pull, but it's got that ability to do its own thing. And that can unnerve society, right? As much as we're like, no, be an individual, but no, be an individual within the group.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that whole think outside the box. You can be anything you want, but not that, and stay within the lines.
Exactly. So let's see, it says severity is based on social communication impairments and restrictive or repetitive patterns of behavior. So, and that's another thing too with Mercury and Uranian energy and just the neurons, the extra neurons, the pattern recognition that comes with neurodivergence and autism. Like it's got to recognize the things that are the threat, at the end of the day. And so they're very good at putting together, okay, there's ravens in the sky over there and they're doing X, Y, or Z. And I smell something on the wind. And the last time I did that, a bear attacked. I don't know. We're on bears today.
Yeah.
But you can see that, right? So again, if you're looking at all these things, are you paying attention to how somebody is taking how you looked at them 5 seconds ago or didn't look at them? No.
Yeah.
It's just not registering. So it's, again, making that space for understanding that there's different ways of processing stuff. And it's not personal. So.
Yeah. Well, I think when I was first testing and everything, I read somewhere that the guy who, I guess, defined autism actually believes it's evolution. Like it's the human brain evolving to a new, because we have less, we don't need the same things that we've had in our brain for, thousands of years. We have different tasks and functionalities now.
Exactly. And the Uranian and Aquarian energy, 11th house energy, is innovation. It's pushing the envelope. It's progressive. It's meant to get society to that next level. So that's right in line with what this is. And again, has always accepted. So astrology has been around for 5,000 years. And this Uranian energy has always been there. It's like, well, that's just, that's just the Uranian energy. That's well, they didn't know about Uranus. I should say Aquarian energy, because Uranus is like it was 1756 or something that it was discovered. So, but then, just to kind of sum up the restricted pattern thing, you have insistence on the sameness. And Angela, we talked about your shirts the other day, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And what did you say about pink? Like if you want to kill you, dress you in pink or something.
Oh yeah. There's just, well, it's really any colors, bright colors in general. I can look at them and they're fine. You can wear whatever color you want. But if I have it on my body, it's like I can close my eyes and feel that there is these foreign invaders. It really kind of reminds me of like Gollum, when they put, I think, chains on him and he's like, it hurts me. That is me wearing color. But so I suffered with that for years, though, years and years and years. And I had a friend, very well-meaning, bought me an entire new wardrobe one time because she felt like it was, but see, that's what the world tells us. This is a default with you. This is a problem. You need to. And then finally, I think I was about 40 that I was like, I only like to wear black. It is the color that makes me happy. I'm not being a gothic, sad person. I just, it just makes me feel good. And then later I started realizing, well, and also think of how much time I spend not picking out my outfit. Like I am dressed and ready to go. It just needs to be clean. And
it's
I'm
efficient. Very, very Virgo, very mercurial.
Yeah. So and so that's like my thing for society is, why does that bug you so much, society? Like what do you care what people are wearing? Like, as long as you're not showing, I don't know, my boobs,
even that covered. No,
well, yeah. That's a whole other story.
I'm like, excuse me, it's a whole other dance.
Yeah, but I mean, I can see like, okay, like, I don't know, I'm dressing indecently and you have children around and yada yada yada. But seriously, it bothers people that it's the same thing. Like, didn't you wear that yesterday? Nope, this is a complete, yes, it is the same shirt, but it is a different version of the shirt that I wore yesterday. The one that I wore yesterday is in the laundry, being washed. And tomorrow, it's going to be the same looking shirt. But I find that super comforting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a them problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things, I don't want to diverge too much on this divergent conversation. But that's one of the reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about 11th house, because I wish that somebody had, like, so long ago in my life, think of how much, this is what I think of how much I could have done with my life if from the get-go somebody had said, oh, you only like to wear black? Okay, no problem. Do this thing. Here's the things that make you function better. Just do them.
We would have
do that
world
for everything
peace.
else. Yeah.
We would have world peace.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's kind of interesting. Like, I have a grandson who is probably neurodivergent. They're getting him tested and everything. And they tend to dress him in a lot of like patterns and stuff like that. And one day I was thinking about it, and he's had some behavior issues. And one day we were talking about it, and I was like, well, that's exactly how I act when I'm wearing, say, pink or a color. I'm cranky. I can't sit still. I'm, maybe try dressing and like find out what his favorite color is. Doesn't have to be black, but find out what that thing is that he likes, and buy 8 of them, And
just
so,
give it a try. And I will say that from an astrology perspective, these energies tend to run in families.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I can see that.
And I know they say that about a lot of things, but I've seen it time and time again. So you're probably right.
Yeah.
Go save him, Grandma. Go save him.
Well, that's it. It is all of us now. It started out with just a couple of us going like, oh, what, and getting tested and being a little bit confused. And now it's pretty much a thing in the family. But it's enlightening too, because all of a sudden it explains, say, my relationship with my mother. It wasn't that either of us were wrong. We had no skills to deal with each other.
Exactly. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this series, actually, is just start that conversation from a more spiritual perspective, although astrology is very, it has a logical sense to it. I see it as the bridge, between spirit and, science, I guess. So
which I feel like emerging.
Exactly, they are. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, we are in the age of Aquarius. It's not just a song. We're the start of a 2,000-year period where it's going to be more of a focus on humanity, and the individual within humanity, which is Aquarius. Like that's the weirdness of it. It's how do I be an individual within the collective? That's always been the fight and the struggle. Well, now we get to focus on that.
Yeah.
Right? The age of Pisces was before this. It allowed us to stop killing each other as much. Like there's still problems, but it's not as bad as it used to be. you know, and before that was the age of Aries, which was a lot of about war and survival, So now
Yeah.
we're in the age of Aquarius. We can get more intellectual. We can look at things differently. It's a really good time for this stuff to start coming out. It's right on time.
Yeah.
So, so you can see how that hypersensitivity, when your nervous system is like basically been hit with a bolt of lightning, because that's the energy that you are. You're living embodiments of that in essence. You're going to feel things differently and see things and experience them. So when people are like, oh God, it hurts me, like hold space for that. They're not just being difficult, or if they want to eat the same thing or have to have it just so on their plate or whatever it might be, like it doesn't need to be a big deal. Pick the battles because there's enough going on in the day.
Yeah.
And then you see easily too where you get meltdowns. It's just too much. It's like, okay, I have to do all these things that you say that I need to do. It's like the whole fish analogy, right? Like a fish will live its whole life thinking it's stupid if it can't, that it can't climb a tree, not realizing it's a fish and it's supposed to be in water.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at this kind of stuff. And of course, there are spectrums. Like there are aspects of this, like if you get a Mercury conjunct Chiron, for example, you might, if it's really close, you might run into somebody who has severe communication issues where they just feel like they can't talk at all. But a lot of times, because there's a perfectionist angle to this mercurial energy, it'll just come from wanting to make sure that you're saying the right thing, so you hold back. And you'll see that a lot with kids. They'll be nonverbal for a while until they aren't, or they just come at it differently. My daughter does her A's, like when she's writing her A's, she insisted on doing Times New Roman.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely insisted that was how she wanted to do her A's, and that's how she does them. And I homeschooled her, and I was like, whatever, you're writing.
Yeah.
Cool. And her teacher that she went into eventually was cool with it. And then she had a substitute just the other day who was like, no, you need to correct this. And I took exception to that for her. I was like, what does it matter if you can tell it's an A?
Yeah. It's another style
And
of
she has
A.
very good penmanship, so you can tell it's an A. So like, and that was my only thing with her. I was like, if you're going to use this one, we got to tell that it's an A and not a D.
Yeah.
And she was like, fine. But that's just, it's a little example of just let it be, let it go. Like what on earth does it matter? But to her brain, it made all the difference in being able to want to write anything, So, and they do recognize this too, that there's different spectrums. Like it says here, the severity is based on the impairments and how restrictive it gets. So, I don't want to demonize the DSM-5. I think it's doing its best to try to help people in its way, because at the end of the day, when you categorize, we can also come together and find out about binaural beats and all of these things, that may be helpful. So let's see, symptoms must be present in early developmental period, but may not fully manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities. That's interesting. Or maybe masked learning strategies in later life. Yeah, or by learned strategies. Yeah, and women tend to do that. They talk about women being late diagnosed, and because we get a different type of socialization. So I'd say that's fair enough. And then symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social and occupational functioning. So yeah, it depends on the environment that you're in. Again, like we talked about, the Google executives will go search for neurodivergent people because they understand that it's it's something that, if given the right environment to thrive, this can be a great asset to society. And
Yeah.
they want to be. Like, autistic people want to be valued. We just don't want to be made to fit inside boxes that we're not meant
Mhm.
for. Because otherwise you feel like, again, like the fish who thinks that they're stupid.
Mm.
You know, like, why
Yeah.
can't I do all of these things that everyone else can do? Well, because your brain is functioning differently.
Yeah.
You
Well, and
know,
then what a loss for society. You
exactly.
know, trying to take a fish and like and critiquing it its whole life because it can't do this correctly. But we have all, and while people, I don't know, I'm going way off the rails with this analogy, but you know, while people are say drowning and they just need a fish to save them, you know what I mean? Like there is a
No,
skill
that's
that the fish can
perfect.
do.
That's a perfect analogy. It's like, so yeah, if somebody in society falls in the water, then they have the dolphin that can come swim up and save
Yeah.
them, you know, but that dolphin can't climb a tree.
Hmm.
So it's looking at these things, realizing that we do have a place within, and then finding that place so that
Hmm.
everybody can be comfortable. Having these conversations about not taking things personally if somebody isn't having eye contact with you.
Hmm.
You know, maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it just means that they're overwhelmed with everything. Maybe they're quiet because they're just processing it all. You know, maybe they need those 2 days after that event to process, because
Hmm.
brains take up an enormous amount of power, of
Yeah.
energy. You know, and so if you've got 65% more neurons, you know, that's more real estate.
Yeah.
It's going to take more to set in and whatnot. So, and then it gets into, you know, needing to look at some of these other developmental disorders. So I don't think we need to get into that.
Now this is super interesting. I know I have to go in about
Yeah,
2
too. So
minutes.
I think we're good here.
And this is like, I really love that you're doing this because this, it's so interesting to see this intersection and puts it in a completely different light, not in, because when you think of like this document, it looks, it's a scary looking document, you know, and there's all these diagnoses and, you know, all this stuff on it. But also looking at it through this lens, is it a disorder or is it an evolution or is it, you know, like the fish, going back to the fish, is it a disorder that the fish can't climb the tree? Or is
Yeah,
it just that we don't understand the fish's talents yet?
exactly. And so being able to just look at it differently, implement these different things, and also have the people who are getting these diagnoses, which again, you get the reaction from, oh, thank goodness, now I know, to
Mhm.
people crying and being devastated.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with them. And it's like, that's where I think astrology can really come in and be like, well, for 5,000 years, we've known about this energy.
Mhm.
And society has integrated it to differing, you know, levels.
Yeah.
You know, it's seen on one spectrum as the genius because of that hyper focus ability, right? Like you get that thing that you want to do, and that's all you want to do. And it's
Mhm.
because it's familiar and routine, and your environment is safe. You know, you can see
Yeah.
that, and you've checked for bears already, and so you can actually relax.
Mhm.
Or there's things that can be done, like if you've got autism, I would suggest looking into like vagus nerve work, you know, things that from EMDR therapy, anti-inflammatory diets, all these things that you hear parents of autistic children try, and they'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
they came back, whatever. There's a reason, because
Yeah.
if you're a lightning bolt, a walking lightning bolt, sometimes you need cool down periods.
Mhm.
And anything that you can do to bring that cooling down and make things less, ah, you know, is going to help you recover quicker.
Yeah.
So another tool in your toolbox. So I don't know if I covered everything. You know, I'm sure sometime I may revisit this as I learn more, but it's one
Yeah,
of the reasons
absolutely.
that I started 11th House. And we're just starting up. We haven't even incorporated yet. If you'd like to donate to give us the initial funds, I'll put a link below, and you can do that. And we're trying to start up this publishing house to not only bring awareness of this as an issue, but to help implement some of these outside of the box ideas into society for the benefit of all of us. Because if it's just, well, that's not the way we've always done things, and get inside our order, well, we're not benefiting, and we have pressing issues that need to be addressed. And I think the publishing is where that starts. It's kind of the grassroots of things. So
Awesome.
thank you,
Yeah.
Authortunities, for giving me this platform.
Oh,
This will also be up on
absolutely.
YouTube shortly. But I really appreciate it and what you're doing there with bringing together the community of like-minded
Awesome.
people to help support each other in any way. So it's
Yeah.
right in line.
Well, thank you for being there and for doing this work, because this is really interesting and I'm excited to see where this goes.
All right. Thank you. And I'm probably going to do this once per week at least, maybe twice at some point, but I'd imagine try to figure out if Thursday at this time works, or, you know, I think I'll just say that. I'll be like on Thursdays in the Authortunities Hub, and I'll put a link to that below too. I'll go live with this, and you can join in the conversation. So next week will be whatever comes after this, because I'm literally just skipping through the DSM-5. And or if you have one that you really want to see, you know, maybe I'll
Yeah.
skip that one. Erectile dysfunction. It's in here. And we can just go through and kind of see, you know, is it a disorder? Is it a problem, or is it a matter of just looking at the different energies? So today we happen to
Yeah.
look at the 11th house and autism, but there are many, many more that I'd kind of like to explore too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you for joining us, and please come back again next week and join us at Authortunities. So
I'm going to be here. This is cool. Thank you, Nikki.
thank you.